everyone, welcome to Beer Cake. I'm your host JJ Co, and today we have Jonathan Vazcones. I don't know, I have a hard time calling you John because I've always known you as Jonathan. But he's a very good friend of mine. Actually, how long ago was it? Was it 2009? So it
Yeah,
was over 10 years now. So we've known each other for like 12 years almost, right? Or something like that.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. He was actually, I don't know, should I say? Yeah, you were my intern. Well, not just mine. Beth and I, we both supervised you, but yeah. So you started out as an intern, and for that fateful summer, and then we became friends, and we stayed friends all this time. Yeah. So you're no longer half my age anymore. I think you've gone. How old are you now? 30 something?
32 in a couple weeks.
32. So you're only wait. So 32, so 32 divided by 52 is what? What percentage is that? It's
It's
like
like
three
point 0.2
fifths.
something.
No,
Yeah.
it's 3/5. So no longer one half, it's 3/5. So you've gone past that half mark. But anyway, yeah. So, wow, you got some. What's with the beard? Actually, let me say, I was wondering before we got on. I was wondering if we were going to be all bearded or not because of COVID, people were not cutting their hair. They're not, they're growing things.
Yeah, no. It's interesting. So my last day in the office was on March 12th. It was a Thursday, and I went in for one meeting, and then I had another meeting in the Bronx. I work in Midtown, and I canceled my meeting in the Bronx for the afternoon, and I said, "Hey, listen, COVID's getting a little hairy, especially in the Bronx. I'm just gonna go
Mm.
home." And that was the last day I went to the office, and I remember sort of leaving all my tchotchkes on my desk and like around my computer. And I said, well, I'll come back next week. I'll be back in 2 weeks. And it's been almost a year later.
And
But
yeah.
it was literally maybe a week and a half after that, when I realized like this is for the long haul. So like I shaved all my hair off. Well, my top of my head. And like I was like in this, okay, just survive, get through the next however many months of COVID. And then like, it became a sustainable sort of mindset for me.
Yeah. Did you think that it was gonna last this long? I didn't. Actually, when before the lockdown happened, I was consulting at a nonprofit organization, and they brought me into their office to kind of like suss out like what we all thought was gonna happen, because we were starting to hear about this um, infectious disease that's come across. And how what my take was on it. And at the time, I didn't think it was that serious, and I kind of like, because I was thinking like, oh, it's like SARS. I mean, SARS was back, what was it, 2012 or something
Yeah.
when it happened. Yeah. It was serious back then, but not to the point where we had to lock everyone down. So I kind of thought it was going to be like that. It was serious enough for us to all take precaution, but not to
Hmm.
the point where we had to shut everything down. And soon enough, weeks later, everything got shut down. And I was like,
Yeah.
boy, was I wrong.
It's funny. So like I think I had the same sentiment as you. Like I think middle of February, around the same time last year, I'm like, we started hearing about it. And then once they shut like Chinese cities down, like 15 million people,
Mm,
I said, whoa, wait a second. Like that's not normal. That's 15 million people. That's more than all the population of New York City, right? Like
yeah.
and so for me at that point, I started perking my ears and realizing how serious it was. And then once like the UK and the European countries shut down, I was like, oh man, we're going to be in this for a while. Because if we're the last people to shut down, we'll be one of the last to open up as well, theoretically, as the wave sort of passes, like as people get a handle of what's going on. And so, did I think it was going to be a year? I don't think so. I thought we would be fine by the fall, but no. Well, so we'll
Yeah.
see. Maybe this year.
Yeah, I think with the vaccine, if enough people get vaccinated, I think it, maybe herd immunity will uh, take over and whatnot. But I mean, they already have um, a different strain.
Right.
Yeah, so we don't know what that means. Um, yeah, we don't
But
know.
I think for me, like the biggest coming to peace term with COVID was that it's going to be here until it's not, and that's okay. And like everything has a life cycle, right? Including this. And so it's just running its course. And like me by myself, I'm not going to change life or my fate or reality. So like, why am I going to keep fighting it? It's going to be over when it's over, and I have to do the best with what I have, with
Oh
what
yeah,
where I am.
I mean, I'm not necessarily fighting it. I guess I'm just
Mm-hmm.
speculating, because we're talking.
Yeah. No, no, but I've been in so many meetings where it's just like, okay, we have to plan, like, what are we planning for reopening for the fall? When do we need to
Uh,
start schedule? And it's just like, you can't. You really can't. And so like it is what it is. And like we'll just do what we have to do, and we plan as if it's gonna be here when we're gonna do our thing. And that's okay.
well, but I do understand you're talking about at your company, right? I mean, at organizational levels, you do have to talk about contingencies and what if plans, like if this, have some plan in place. I mean, if we had a plan when the pandemic hit, it wouldn't maybe have been so bad. I don't know. Actually, maybe it would have been just as bad. Who knows? Yeah, we really don't know. At
I've
this,
been leaning, I've been super leaning into like life probably just gives everybody like the minimal dose, like the minimum effective dose to learn like the lesson. Like, and I've been
mm,
really leaning into that because like there are some things that affect other people that for me it's no big deal, but for them it's life altering and life shattering in some situations, and then vice versa, right? And so at that point it's just like, we could have a plan, but the plan for your company or your situation may not have been sufficient, and then what happens then? And so it's at that point it's like we have to plan like it's here, and figure out within the new paradigm what's happening.
well, that's true right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right. I think it may be with us indefinitely, or it may become something like the flu, where every
Mm-hmm.
season it comes up with a different strain of the virus or something. Although I think the flu and cold are also types of coronaviruses, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I
right.
think. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it may become something that's maybe not life threatening, but just annoying. Although flu, people who are vulnerable, like the elderly, and people with preconditions, they can die of the flu as well. But yeah, but it's yeah. Anyway, all right. I think that's a very healthy attitude. I think I'm not sure, a little bit. See, I think on a personal level, I think on an
Mm-hmm.
individual and personal level, I think you can definitely take that attitude that, kind of go with, the flow of life as it, you know, gives you roll with the
Mm-hmm.
punches, I guess is the saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I still think that at organizational levels, where you're not dealing with just individuals, the organization is not just a collection of individuals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because all of you put together actually does create an entity of its own. Um, and depending on what's going on, you do have to kind of plan, at least have some sort of an idea of which direction you're going to go, should this happen or should that happen.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with like being thoughtful or being candid about what the reality is for each particular situation, whether it's organizational, whether it's personal. Um, but I do think that there is like this at least American attitude where we have to figure it out. We have to fight this thing, and we have to
Oh,
keep business continuity going, and we need to plan for that. And like I've been in too many meetings where it's just like, stop. Like if your organization provides a widget for this community, and you're going to still provide that widget for this community, now is the widget useful during coronavirus? I don't know. Like that's a plan that you guys need to ascertain, and like maybe you deliver the widget in a different way. But like if your widget is no longer useful because you're in coronavirus, no amount of planning is going to make the widget useful again as an organization, whether that's an idea, whether that's a production, whether it's like just people. So
yes, that's true. But let's say the widget can be useful if you made certain adjustments.
okay.
Like a lot of businesses had to pivot, right? So, one very obvious example is restaurants. I mean, since the lockdown, we couldn't go to restaurants anymore. But, some of them uh, pivoted fast enough to make pickup and delivery service, make it worthwhile for them to stay in business. Some, didn't. And, a lot of them shut down. Same thing with like brick and mortar retail businesses, a lot of them. Like if they were in position or if they were able to shift quickly to online, delivery of services or goods. I mean, not services. Services is, yeah, well, depending on the types of services. But anyway, if they were able to pivot quickly enough, then they had a chance of surviving, right? So,
Is that a function of planning though?
um, oh, that's an interesting question. Okay, let's see.
Because I'm not sure it
I think
is, right?
there's some aspects. Um, you mean planning before COVID hit, before the lockdown happened, or after? Because,
Yeah, I think at any point, like if you're a business and you had to pivot, like
yeah,
you're not making new cuisine, right? That you're not planning to do something different. It's just like you're scrambling to like deliver the same service within a new paradigm, but there's very little planning around that, right?
maybe we're not agreeing on the term planning.
Hmm, could be.
Maybe we're using different definitions. Um,
And like yeah, maybe.
yeah. I mean, okay, so what do you mean by planning when you're using that word?
Well, I think there's a level of like forethought where you can ascertain like multiple directions, and then you assign sort of like what's the probability of situation A, B, or C occurring, and then you plan to go with the situation that's likeliest to occur, right? And so that's like a forethought. You're proactively looking out for alternative sort of situations, and then ascertaining which one's more feasible.
Okay, so it's a bit of forecasting involved there as well, right? So
Yeah.
you're kind of based on the information you have, you're trying to figure out which direction the wind is going to blow, and so you plan for that contingency. Now, in your scenario, are you ignoring all other contingencies, or you're just sort of making the best educated guess as to which direction you should be going, and you're planning for that, putting all your eggs in that basket?
Well, because the future like is uncertain, right? Like I think everybody arbitrarily picks something, and then they hang on to the god of whatever gives them this certainty, whether it's the numbers, whether it's their gut, whether it's consensus, right? But like it's an arbitrary moot point, right? So like planning, like I just finished a 5-year strategic plan with one of my organizations that I'm involved in, and I'm curious to sort of see like is it stale? Like we worked a year to get this strategic plan.
Yeah. No, no. Finish the thought. Yeah.
No, and it's just like we worked a year on this, and like it was based on the circumstances that were when we initiated. Now it's like I don't even think that's reasonable, but it's something that as an organization makes sense to strategize around. And so now we have the conversations of here's the strategic plan plus right? Like, plus if this happens, we're going to be able to do this. If this doesn't happen, we have to do the other thing. And it's just, at that point, it just begs the question, like, why do you engage in strategic planning?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, at the time, so I left my corporate job now 4 years ago, almost 4 years ago, and at the
Woo,
time, what?
woo!
Oh,
You got out of the rat race.
yeah. Well, yeah, that's a whole other story. Uh, I don't know if I'm. Yeah, I don't know if I'm better off for it, but I don't miss it. Let's just say that. Um, So at the time, I was kind of sick, really, really, really sick and tired of one reorganization after another, one uh, sort of, sort of this uh, reorganization plan or improvement plan. They call it different things. Like, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and it came a different sort of wave came almost every year
Mm-hmm.
for maybe 4 or 5 years. And I'm thinking that it takes time, right, for you to uh, plan something, communicate it out to your entire organization, implement it, and then it takes time for it to take root, and then maybe 2 3 years down the road you'll see some results or something like that. But to shift and reorganize every single year, it was kind of ridiculous. Um, and um, and I felt, and but worse than that, I felt like um, that it was basically the same thing with a different name attached
Mm.
to it, you know? So, no, why did I bring this up? Oh, yes, your strategic plan. I think as an organization, I think strategic plans are useful. Whether you're in a small business or large business or nonprofit organization or even on an individual basis, I think having some sort of strategy can be useful. Um, but uh, yeah, I lost my train of thought.
No, it's okay.
It's
Like,
no, go ahead.
go ahead.
Oh,
No, I was
um,
gonna say. So, go ahead. Sorry.
no, 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 no. Yeah, no. You go ahead.
I was gonna say, in defense of chucking strategic planning, um, it's that for me, I think the older I get, the execution, and I think this is something that you really hammered into me all those years ago when I was interning with you, is that planning is great, but execution is where you make your money. And so we could have the best strategic plan, but if we execute like shit,
Oh yeah.
it doesn't help anything. So if we're so in my mind, if I'm too busy planning and not focusing on the execution, because again, strategic planning takes a lot of energy, psychic and otherwise, right? That if everyone is exhausted at the execution phase, or everyone's hands off because the core team, the C team has been so involved in the strategy that the execution is an afterthought. Like, that's where I think we're missing the mark. And like, to make it more relevant, right? For me, I may have a plan or an idea of what I want to do, but if I don't execute at a high enough level for my standards, then I let myself down, I let my wife or my kid down. And so for me, like, more of life is, and the more I talk to people, it's less about sort of connecting the dots looking forward and more about making sure that you're executing dot to dot, making sure that you're creating the next dot, that when you look back and have that 2020 hindsight, you'll connect the dots looking backwards. But if you're executing and you're really doing the best that you can with what you have, um, then it gets great. And then obviously, like, the Elon Musks or like the geniuses, the MacArthur fellows of our world, those are the folks who can plan and execute at the same time at a high level. But I don't think I'm there yet. I'm just working on the execution.
Yeah, I don't think Elon Musk is entirely human. And I say that in a very respectful way.
Oh, for sure.
um, but okay, I think I certainly agree. Planning for planning's sake is nothing. It's just total BS, right? The, that's something that companies sometimes do or organizations sometimes do because they feel like, it looks good. It looks like you're
Hmm.
doing something. Ooh, here's this 5-year plan. Look at this charts and everything, right? Nice little handbook. But guess what? After it's all done, oh yeah, and I've experienced this too. After it's all done, no one even looks at it, right?
Right.
No one refers back to it because why? It's not executable, it's too complicated, or it actually doesn't make sense, or it's actually not useful at all.
Hmm.
It could be any number of those reasons. Or maybe it was a good plan, but you have no clue as to how to go about executing it, which is very often, it happens. Yeah.
Hmm.
But you're right. Execution is definitely where it's at. Without that, you can have the best plan in the world. It doesn't
Yeah,
mean
and
anything.
100%. And I think of like, some of these great philosophers, right? Like Aristotle and some of these other people who kept saying like your intentions, if you have the right intentions, then you're doing the right thing. And it's just like, no, that there came some other folks and said, it doesn't matter what your intentions are if you kill somebody, right? Like you may have the best of intentions, but if you push the lady into the street trying to save her and she got hit by the car, like you still didn't help her, right? And
Hmm.
so for me, like if organizations, companies, and people started working on focusing on the execution, don't focus on the planning. Just be present in the moment, execute right now, moment to moment. You'll be all right. Because there's no plan for the unforeseen circumstances that life gives you, and only arbitrarily do we look back and say like, I got here because of X, Y, and Z. But it was arbitrary. It was by chance, and if you were lucky enough to have seen it, then you just maybe just got lucky, and that's okay too.
That's very I don't know. I would almost want to say it's existential, but maybe not quite. But yeah. I mean, but there's a lot of truth in that. That um, living in like living in the present is much more important sometimes than constantly looking into the future that may or may not happen, or constantly looking back that's already happened and there's nothing you can do about it. The only
Right.
thing you can really affect and have an impact on is the present, right? Um, and so, yeah, I think, I mean, I agree. Um, Certainly on an individual level, I don't know how much time I spend proportionately like in the present moment, and then thinking about like what I need to do next, you know but
And and honestly, I think people and organizations do the same thing, right? Because it makes you feel like you're proactively engaging your time in a useful way. Because there are some things that you can see coming down the pike, right? Like that the sun is going to set at 5:30 something today, so you have to plan for night, right? Like humanity has been having to do that forever, and I don't think there's anything wrong with sort of saying like, okay, well, I know this is sort of a certainty. There's these different things I'm going to be doing, but I don't think that takes away from saying, when night comes, I'm going to grow wings and I'm going to go flying, right? So, like, if you're a company and you can see a change in the industry happening, you are a bipodal, two-legged, two-armed thing. It doesn't mean you're going to be able to grow wings because you know that the night is coming. So, as an organization, like, what exactly are you planning for, right? Like, are you looking for a pivot? Are you looking to sort of do something else? And I think this is where organizations and people sort of stretch themselves too thin, right? It's this idea that I will be like I can see the opportunity and I'm going to capitalize it, irregardless or regardless of what skill sets or what talent that we have that's going to get us there. And so even though you can see it, you have to really just be present to where you are now. Like right now, it's still the afternoon. I still have a long time before the sun sets. What am I doing with that? When it gets here, I'm still going to be myself. It just my circumstances have changed. So am I going to change with them, or am I going to try to meet that moment? And so for me, like the whole planning, it I've been really focusing on just the execution. Like when
Mm.
night comes, you want to execute. And execution just means like if this is something that you can see coming on the pike, then you already know what you're going to do. You have an idea of what you're going to do. You're not going to reinvent the wheel or reinvent yourself or your company because you see this thing coming down the pike. It's no, we're going to position ourselves. If the storm is coming, we know we have an idea of what to do. And let's just do the best that we can. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. And that's all right.
Well, well, some people might argue that it's not all right. But anyway, aside from that, I would argue that you even thinking along those lines, you have put some thought into it, which is kind of like planning. So planning doesn't always. I guess I'm looking at planning as a, a broader thing where you're putting some thought into it. Maybe you don't have a step by step, manual, so to speak, but you have some idea as to how you're going to execute something or how you're going to move in one direction or another, particularly if other people are involved. If it's just me, oh, this is interesting. Oh, okay. We're gonna have to pause because you dialed in twice. It's counting as a multiple thing. So we're gonna have to actually end this and then start it up again.
Sounds good.
So yeah, so I'll send you a new link. Picking up from where we left off. So I think I'm using a broader definition of planning because
Hmm.
I think so. I mean, in any situation, you're not going totally blind with totally no preconception, pre notion, or having thought about it at all, right? And having no context. Um,
Hmm.
Right, that's not what you're talking about. Okay, so in that case, I think then we're both right. Or maybe we're both agreeing on the same thing. That I guess the definition of planning that I was using is there's still some thought put into whatever it is that you're encountering and what you and your organization need to do. And you're right, like if you put in that thought beforehand, then whatever you're encountering, like you do kind of know what you're doing, right? Hold
Yeah.
on a second. I have to. Sorry.
It's okay.
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
I see what you're saying, and I think you're right. Like there is a level of planning that obviously, like I'm not saying that people wake up like Dory or from Finding Nemo and just like
Right.
unsure of where the world is every day, right? Like I think people have that, but I do know like there's like this fetish around like just planning and like making sure everything's buttoned up, to the point where like people just don't execute at a level that would indicate that they had planned to that extent. And I honestly think that when organizations plan it in certain ways, like they don't take it into account, where the deficiencies are, because the plan is sort of what you're focusing on. So for me, and it's taken me a couple of years to get here, is just have an idea, execute really well, and then take in new information and then make another decision and execute really well. But it's not sort of strategic planning 5 years out. It's necessarily sort of you need to make decisions quicker, right? And so
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so here's a metaphor. So, well, I don't know if this is true in the actual competitive archery, but it's like you aim and you shoot, right? So that's what you think, most people think that that's what you should do. You aim first and then you shoot.
Hmm.
But no, you shoot and then see where it goes, and then you adjust your aim. And then the more you do that, the closer you'll get to the bullseye, right?
Hmm.
But if you spend all your time aiming but never shooting, or you mess up the shooting,
Right.
then you'll never ever hit the bullseye. Yeah, it's kind of like that. I heard that metaphor in some business seminar or something.
And honestly, it's like for me, my job when I go to these strategic plans or like when I think strategically with somebody else or whatever, helping people plan, it's forget about the plan. Let's focus on make a decision. What's the next step and execute that really well. And
Mm-hmm.
if the next step is literally open your computer to like make sure that you can look for a job or you make sure you can write something, make sure you don't drop your computer. Because I've seen that happen before. You drop your computer, now it's broken. Now you can't even work. And it's just like it's all these little things. And then again, you go into the sports metaphors, right? Like it's all the little things that come together when you execute them correctly that happens. And I think there's something to be said about that, about people's life in that way as well, right? Like if you wake up worrying about the day, then you're gonna execute a really shitty morning. And if you just wake up and focus on the next thing in front of you, you know, you have I think a healthier chance of executing at a higher level. But I don't know, like
Yes, but if you had put some thought into it the night before, right, and planned out some things, maybe the major blocks, then all you have to do is follow the plan and you won't have such a shitty day. I don't know why I'm arguing the point because I'm not the best planner in the world, actually. You,
really.
um, I can. I mean, I think I'm a pretty good like project manager, program manager. Yeah, you say that like incredulously. Yeah. Wait, am I a planner? Is that how you know?
You are by definition a planner.
Oh, I am.
Yeah.
By definition. What dictionary is that? You look up planning and there is my face.
No, I'm just saying JJ Co as defined by all of my experiences of you. Like you are a master tasker planner.
Ah, you know what? Maybe after I left my corporate life, I've slacked off a little bit, maybe. Because after that, I kind of like went with life as it came. Um, Maybe that's why I have
Mm,
this sort of lingering feeling hey, maybe this could have turned out better or something. I don't know. I'm still like trying to figure out what this part of my life is. Um,
it's where you're at. It's a honestly
yes.
like there's no judgment value to it.
Oh
It
no,
just
I'm
it
not.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm
Well,
just
but when you say better, like there's a judgment there.
hmm. Okay. Yes. But to be fair, um it wasn't always about it's I'm not actually blaming the lack of planning or you
Mm,
know, um I think one of the things I probably also didn't do is uh stay in the moment as well, you know.
probably.
Yeah, I think I could have done that better. So, yeah. So your point is well taken.
Well, I think the older I get, the more that I realize that we're all going through the same things, right? Like my career is going to be in flux at some point.
Hmm.
I'm going to walk in your shoes on one day, right? At the same way that my daughter's going to walk in my shoes in one day. Like we're all walking in each other's shoes, but we all think that our experiences are incredibly unique.
Oh, I
And
don't think so.
only, well, some people say, why did this happen to me, right? And
Oh
it's
no,
just
I
like,
I never think that. No. I
well,
don't.
you're ahead of it, yeah. And honestly, that's a very healthy sort of detachment from like the outcome of a situation does not define your value or your worth. It's for me, it's did you make a sound decision? Were you when you were making the decision, were you thoughtful? And that's being in the present moment as you're making a decision. And if that's the
Ah,
case, the
yes.
outcome doesn't necessarily matter. Like,
Yes. I think philosophically I will agree with that. Um Now, in my case, that wasn't always the case. It was like, as I am taking action, as I am executing, I realize I am doing absolutely the wrong thing here.
Well, judgment valleys again, right? Like I'm not sure if it was the right or wrong thing. It was the thing that you were doing. And I have a good friend of mine who says to me that every experience in life prepares you for the next thing, right? And so that ambiguity, that stress, that angst you felt is softening you to the next challenge that's going to be even more anxious and even more filled with angst and even more sort of uncertain. And
Um, yeah, and I say the wrong thing. I mean, I say that jokingly. It's not. It wasn't toward. It did not result in the outcome that I had wanted or intended.
that's
So,
okay. That
yeah.
happens.
Oh yeah, of course, of course. That's
But
life.
wow,
Yeah.
but I don't think that's a function of your poor decision making or poor planning, right? Like sometimes some things don't work out, and as long as your
Um.
decision was sound, then like then it was
Right.
okay.
No, but that's what I'm arguing, that my decision may not have been as sound.
In retrospect or in the moment.
And definitely in retrospect, and in the moment, I think I had sort of this inkling that, yeah, this is not, maybe not the best thing to do.
Well, the
Yeah.
best thing to do is whatever because like sometimes you just don't have good options, right? So like if you have really terrible options, you're picking the least worst option, right? That's going to be a win. Sometimes like you just have very bad decisions or very bad cards to play, right? And so like you do your best and it was going to always, just happen this way. Like this was the best possible outcome in the worst case scenario.
Yes, that certainly does happen, and so it's like this. Well, I'm still going to argue in my case that was not the case. That I actually made poor choices.
I'm trying to give you compassion. I'm trying to like find
No,
the
no,
saving grace.
no. Thank you for that. But here's the thing. But that's part of life too. That we don't always make the best choices. We sometimes do make crappy choices, and sometimes we know it, and we do it anyway. But anyway, aside from that, I think I think this is how I used to think actually, and I still hold that belief on some level that and that I mean, you say that I by definition I'm a planner. I think when it comes to like projects and things like that, yes. Not necessarily when it comes to life. Um and so uh I was never someone who was able to have a 5-year plan. You know, people talk about
Mm-hmm.
having a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan, or they know exactly what direction they're going. In 5 years, they're going to be this, they're going to have this, in 10 years, and so forth. I never had that. I didn't even know what I was going to do the coming year. And I didn't even, sometimes I didn't even know what I was going to do next month. Um, and so having these like long-term plans, and I was never good at making those long-term plans. So a strategy, if you will, that I developed for myself is, okay, what's immediately around me? What are my choices? What are my immediate choices? And of the choices that I can see for myself, I'm going to pick the best choice and make that. And then keep doing that, whether,
Mm-hmm.
and the intervals can be daily, or it can be hourly, or it can be weekly, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And you are in your life, you are making choices moment by moment. You're actually making choices. Um, and by doing so, I saw that, you know, a month from now, a month later, a year later, and so forth. And then you look back and you saw that by making the best choices that you could possibly make in that moment, that you actually made progress.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
honestly, I don't disagree with you. And Like in the
I'm actually going to your side
yeah, because
of the
I don't
argument.
disagree with you. Of course, I don't disagree with you. That's why I don't disagree with you. And like it's interesting because like I was never a believer that people can know who they want to be 5 years from now,
Yeah.
right? Like that's such like a romanticized American ideal, right? Or like
Is
in
it?
5 years,
Oh, is it an
I
American thing or?
I think I don't know. Like it's hard to say, but when I speak to some of my friends who I've left in South America or overseas, and it's just like it's a different way of thinking about the world than like there's a grandiosity to saying I have enough control and autonomy of the world that I'm living in that I'm going to be able to plan 5 years in advance and have these metrics and these goal stones or goals to hit, and then I'm going to hit them. And if I don't hit them, at least I'll be closer to this ideal. And if I do hit them, I'll make it and I'll find the next thing and then the next thing. And for me, like it that idea really lost its glimmer pretty early on in my professional career because it's just like who the hell can look 5 years out, right? And see and think who they want to be and how they want to see themselves. And so for me, like that just never that doesn't resonate. And so when someone tells me I have a 5 year plan to get married, have kids, be this or be that, it's like it's like you might as well just fantasize, right? Like that sounds like an exercise in imagination. And like that's there's a great function to that and a great utility to that, but there's a level of sort of detachment and just being sort of jovial and just like laughing about it. Like I want to be a rich millionaire by the time I'm 40, or like I want to do that. Like I want to be married and have 4 kids. But like, yeah, why don't you become an astronaut in 5 years too? Like,
What if they don't want to? What if that's not what they want?
well, what you want is like I think it's very dangerous when people start making these long thought out plans for things that they want in the moment, right? Like wants and needs are like
Ah,
fleeting, right?
interesting. Okay. So this actually opens up a whole other can of things. One is so you make this long term plan because that's what you think you want 10,
Mm-hmm.
20 years from now, when in fact 10, 20 years from now, you look at the plan that you've actually followed and have accomplished everything that you set out, and you wonder, was this really the thing that was best for me?
Always.
That's interesting. Wait, you're
Well,
saying always as in that always happens, or?
yes. The only reason I say this is because there's a level of disillusionment that people have whenever they reach milestones, right? Whether it's birthdays, careers, or professionally. And the challenge with reaching these milestones is that you sort of figure out what's next, right? So like everything you've worked hard over 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and let's say you were fortunate enough to accomplish it, right? What do you do then? Like your purpose for the last 5, 10 years
Mm.
has been to execute at such a high level that's going to get you to this position and to this place. And then what do you do from there?
So once
Now
you,
you're lost.
yeah, so once you get there, it's not all it's cracked up to be.
If you get there,
If you
right?
get there.
And if you don't get there, you feel like a failure, right? Like there's all these levels of like, I should have made better decisions. I could have done my best there. I didn't execute. I was busy planning. I wasn't in the moment. And it's just like, at some point, like, how often do you have to do that?
A lot. We do that a lot. Maybe not you, but I think human beings we do that a lot. But you're right. That's kind of pointless. You know, that's not productive. Um, you're right. And earlier, when I was going on and on about some of the stupid choices that I made, I was doing exactly that. Yeah.
I think so. But you're not immune to it, right?
But
Like we
but here's
everyone
the
does it.
thing. I think the point is, um, yeah, you're right. We're not. None of us are immune to that. But I think the point is, what have you learned from it, and how are you going to move forward?
Right, right. And obviously, like one of the things that we're overlooking is that decisions have consequences and outcomes,
Yes.
right? And so there's this concept of regret and being able to sort of look back and hypothesize all the alternate universe scenarios of where one imaginable decision that is so sort of strong in your belief that's led you to where you're at. If you had done something different for that one decision, things would have been great or things would have been better. And it's just like,
No
or
such
things would have
thing.
been different. There's no such thing.
Different, yes, but any one particular decision is not going to make or break what
Correct.
your life was going to turn out to be.
So for me, it's like the decision making tree or whatever way that you decide, that is where life's crux is. Like, are you making decisions? Well,
I will actually retract what I just said. Uh, in most cases, any one particular decision is not going to make or break, or change your life dramatically. Accumulation of those decisions will, but there are certain life choices that does send you in a complete different trajectory than others. There are certain pivotal moments in your life when, had you made this decision as opposed to that decision, your life could have been really different.
but do
Um,
you know which ones those are?
um,
Or can you know which ones those are?
I think, I think maybe the most important decisions
Give me one.
is, okay, who you're gonna marry.
Because the act of marrying is significant for you.
Well, because of what marriage is, you're committing yourself to another person, to walk hand in hand, in life. Now, to divorce yourself, it can get very messy, especially if you have children, it can get very messy. So, that does actually, the consequences of the decision to marry someone has enormous consequences. Whether you stay in that marriage, let's say, if you stay in that marriage and you're happy, that's great, right? That's the best
Sure,
outcome, right?
sure.
But if you stay in that marriage and you're not happy, that's terrible. But because you're not happy, you decide to divorce. That also has harmful consequences too. So I think,
Yeah.
well, yeah, I'm gonna say choosing your career is not as dire, because I think you can always make the choice to go in a different direction. It's not easy always, especially the longer you have been in a particular career path. It's not always easy to shift, um, but it can be done and it can be very rewarding. A lot of people
Yeah.
do it.
uh, I don't disagree with you, and I think to like, and it's interesting that you sort of brought career and marriage, right? So like, for one, I think it depends on where you're at in your life, right? If you're 18 or 22, career is more like
Yeah.
tangible and satiant than like marriage. Like you're not thinking about marriage at 22 or 21, maybe, but maybe most likely not, right? And then the second thing that I think about when you have this question of like, who do I marry? I think of a good friend of mine, Sergeant Brown, and he's always said to me, don't look at where you fell, look at where you tripped, because
Mm-hmm.
that's where you'll know you made a mistake, right? And so when we say like who we're gonna marry, like if you're at the point of deciding that X person is the one is my mate that I'm gonna marry, then you've already made your decision the months or the weeks or the minutes that led up to this sort of like thought popping into your head. Like there are certain people that you've met that you've known automatically or within minutes or within months that this person's not going to be marriage material for you.
Oh yeah.
So there's no question that this person's going to even come to that juxtaposition or to that juncture where it's like, I'm going to ask him to marry me. So the question then becomes like, the person that you are thinking about it, you've already made up your mind. Like now it's just a function of like, if this marriage didn't work, it's not about where you fell, where the divorce happens. It's did you did you oversee certain flaws that were a big deal for you that you didn't think about in the beginning because you really liked all these other traits and features, right? Now you sort of have this idea of like, oh, well, I actually tripped 6 months into the relationship, not a year later when we got married, and then 3 years later when we sort of got divorced. So for me, it's like
I
one consequential decision doesn't make or break your life. It's the combination of all of them.
Yeah, I think maybe you're dissecting the decision making process a little more than I am. I'm kind of looking at that whole thing as sort of one decision. I think you're looking at, so, you know, some people say like women know like the minute they meet someone if they know that they're going to marry them. Um, that actually is true in a lot of cases. I know immediately if I'm going to marry this person or not, you know?
Well, they have to want to marry you too, right? So
Well,
like,
of
there's also
course.
that.
Right, right, right. So it just because I want to marry them doesn't mean the marriage is actually going to happen. Yeah, but at least there's a decision on my part. Oh, this is somebody I could marry, you know, or I'd like to marry, or
Right.
whatever.
But
But
would
that
you, sorry, go
that
ahead.
so I think you're looking at it as um you're looking at each step of the process of coming to that conclusion as individual decisions or individual points of decision. I'm looking at that whole thing as a single decision. So that's,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I think the reason we sort of came into this sort of like
Yeah.
uh, rabbit hole is because like I really don't believe that there's one decision in your life that fundamentally makes or breaks. And like you said, the marriage, who you decide to marry can sort of like make or like have in such an impactful change in your life, or it can affect your life the most. And for me, it's like I'm not sure. I don't know. Maybe it is, and maybe it's not. But I'm just not sure that that one decision is the one that fundamentally alters your life one way or the other. Like I do think that people make bad decisions and then they're stuck with poor like decisions
Yeah.
further. Like, and that's where like this vicious cycle of like you have to hit rock bottom at some point because you just run out of bad decisions to make, that the one decision you're doing is like the best possible decision. And so that hopefully takes you out of the rock bottom. But it's for me, it's like I don't think there's one decision. I think it's how you think about it. Sorry,
But that in that case though, that is a pivotal moment. You
which
hit
one?
rock you hit rock bottom and the decision that you make to come out of that bottom, right? That is a pivotal decision. That is a decision that changes the rest of your life. So,
But that's yeah. Go ahead.
yeah, I guess I'm looking at I mean it certainly is a process, and you know, decision making itself is a process,
Right.
right? There are some decisions that you make in a split second and you think of it, you think it through, and you also execute in a millisecond. There are some decisions that you do that. Um but then there are other decisions where it takes you sometimes, you know, not just minutes but years for you to think through
Why?
something and you finally execute on it. And
But why do you think that's the case?
I think it has to do with the consequences of that decision. Like
Mm,
the bigger the consequence of that decision, the more thought you want to put into it. But then, of course, going back to your earlier point of having planning paralysis, same thing. In any kind of decision making, you could be thinking about it, you know, year after year and never actually pull the trigger, and you know, and then that goes nowhere. It's just wasted energy, really.
100%.
Yeah. But
And go ahead.
no, no, go ahead.
No, like I think you're touching on something really interesting that so like we've gone from like planning to like let's figure out like okay, well maybe it's not just planning, but maybe it's the decision making, and then maybe it's the execution, and now you're talking about the consequences, right? And I think organizations and people go through this like they focus so much on the planning, they forget about the decision, or they don't focus on the execution, or they don't focus on the consequences, right? And I think depending on where you are and what your focus is, you're going to either err to one of those like 3 or 4 different things, right? Planning, decision, execution, or outcomes, right? Or consequences. And I think something you said earlier was really on the mark, where like, if you're going to marry somebody right away, right? And or whether they're marriage material. I apologize, right? I think
Yeah,
that's what you said.
yeah. Whether I want to marry them or not. Not that it's actually going to happen. We don't
No,
know.
totally,
Yeah.
totally. But if that is such a consequential decision for you, and you feel that you intrinsically can answer that or decide within a millisecond or within a minute, right, pretty quickly, I would contest that every other decision that's not as consequential as marriage for you would be even easier to make, right? You intrinsically should know, based on who you are today, whether one decision that, what do you eat, where do you want to go, what do you want to do, where do you want to work, who do you want to work for, like, it's not as consequential as who you want to marry, because you've said this and you know right away whether you're going to marry somebody. So then these other decisions should be like cake. But
Oh
people
yeah.
spend time and waste time on these other inconsequential decisions when it's just like,
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Yeah. Well, the people who know me know that I'm not married. I've never married. And so therefore all my gut feelings about the person that I wanted to marry was wrong.
no, no,
Um,
no, it was wrong,
no,
but
but
yeah.
I mean, I jest, but no,
Mm-hmm,
I see your point. So here's where it's interesting, right? So there are certain types of decisions where the decision is not based on facts necessarily. It's not based on. There's a certain sort of intuitiveness that you employ with certain decisions, especially when it comes to people. You
mm-hmm,
meet people all the time, right?
mm-hmm,
Some you like, some you don't like, and sometimes you know immediately you like them. Sometimes you immediately know you don't like them for whatever reason. Sometimes you
mm-hmm,
can't even put a finger on it. It's just a feeling that you get. Or,
mm-hmm.
you feel like you can trust them or not trust them or whatever. And then, but then there are also people that you meet where your first impression was completely wrong. And the more you got to know them, the more you like them, and vice versa, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think, so here's where making decisions about people is probably more consequential than anything else in life, I think. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
I don't disagree.
yeah, I think
Go
so.
ahead.
So, but here's where we don't necessarily use logical tools all the time, or maybe not at all most of the
Mm-hmm.
time. We just intuit these things, and so where does that come from? And and the thing is, like, this gut feeling that we get, we actually, like, you would not use purely your gut feeling to make decisions about policy or about your financial planning or whatever. You would look at numbers and data and charts and all kinds of things, before you actually make a decision, even like what school to go to or what job to get and all that. But when it comes to people, we actually rely a lot more on our intuition than we'd like to admit. Or
No,
maybe
yeah.
that is the right thing, maybe that's not. I don't know.
So something that I heard a couple of weeks ago that me and my wife have been spending a lot of time thinking is that um, everything about you is just looking for self-preservation. Like, if we think about it, the job of your body is to make sure to keep you alive, right? Like, your brain is there to keep your body alive so it can keep feeding itself, having nutrients. So it's so everything that you do, every thought, every sort of organ, every cell, every sort of molecule of oxygen, every atom in your body is only there for self-preservation, including your personality, right? And so just come along with me with this thought, right? So like, if all of biology is about preserving the body and self-preservation, then your intuition is just your gut microbiome like firing these chemical signals saying that person is going to help you survive more than somebody else. This person could be dangerous to you. We're not sure how, we're not sure yet, but the cells in your stomach that are creating the chemical reactions that's going to your brain saying, I don't really like them, that's my intuition. What I'm sort of trying to argue is that that's just self-preservation. So you could be wrong. Don't get me wrong. And that could be a function of maybe you didn't eat well, maybe you were hungover, maybe you were drunk, maybe you were cranky. So you have these other molecular things going on. But like at the end of the day, like every decision you make is for self-preservation, right? And to keep this body moving and keep this body sort of ingesting nutrients and keeping you alive. So for me, like this idea of like people being these consequential beings in our lives, it's just like maybe it's not. Maybe we make this all more than it has to be. Maybe it's all about self-preservation. And we get along really well because by being community and we both dive to the same sort of similar tunes and similar songs, like being together will help us survive longer than being apart.
That certainly bring it down to a very sort of base level. Yes, on the base of it, that's I would say that's absolutely true, right? That self preservation is the intrinsic motivation for us making one choice after another. That
100%.
this is what we think is going to help me survive and succeed and be happy and so
Yes.
forth. Yeah.
And so, but those are the things that you're conscious about. So when you talked about financial planning, strategic thinking, that's just you being actively aware of trying to make a decision that's going to help preserve you 5 or 10 years on the line, your
Yeah.
organization as well. But when you brought in people, I think it's a very interesting thing because that's like a gut. Like you like personalities versus other personalities, and people sort of whatever auras or vibes, whatever you want to call it, right? They're who they are if they're being their authentic self. And so if you're not going to be able to use them to help you survive, like it makes absolute sense why you would sort of not be along with them. But if you're a radical right leaning neo Nazi, like, and this is who your body is trying to keep alive, obviously it's going to try to find other people like that, and it's not going to find a left leaning, liberal because they're just going to be in contradistinction and fighting all the time.
Um
How's that thought?
yeah, I mean, well, you're getting into sort of tribalism, really. Is finding people who are like you so that you're not standing alone. Because uh, if you're honest, then there isn't a single person on this earth who would believe that they could survive on their own.
Right.
So, yeah. So I think it's definitely a natural instinct for us to find people that we could agree with and work with, and live with, play with, and do all kinds of things with. All right. So yeah. The whole tribalism thing, and especially in this political climate where we're so polarized and everybody is sort of reverting to this tribal thinking. I don't know if we ever came out of this tribal thinking, really. But it's something that I personally don't like. I would even go as far as to say detest. Um, I know that is human behavior. I know it is intrinsic in us
Mm-hmm.
to think that way and to want those things. My tribe, the people who like me, they don't necessarily have to think like me, but as long as they like me and support me, right? So I think that's kind of like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, what we all consciously or subconsciously uh, seek. Um, I think, though, let me clarify. I think the aspect of this sort of tribalism that I don't like is sort of groupthink or like minded, sort of. Um, so me personally, I don't necessarily seek people who think like me or who agree with me. As long as they respect my opinion too. We could disagree on everything, right? But as long as you don't hate me or want, or are hostile to me because I think differently, or I look differently, or I behave differently, then that's where you have conflicts. But yeah, but me personally, I don't know that I necessarily seek people out who agree with me all the time. In fact, I actually like it when uh, we don't always agree, because then that sparks a nice debate and dialogue like we do all the time.
Mm-hmm.
um, and that's kind of like what I also kind of hope for uh, in this podcast. As I talk to different people, that I don't necessarily want guests who always think like me to be on. I want people from all different walks of life, all different viewpoints, to be on my podcast, so I could actually talk to them, get to know them, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, and have this nice dialogue. Because I think that's also kind of what's missing a little bit in our society today is people are not really talking. They're not talking through things, and they're shouting at each other. There might maybe they go as far as debating, but talking to understand and yeah.
I don't disagree with you. And honestly, like I think to your point, like even at a nuclear level, like the people that you're in your network, or like people you talk to, the people you want to talk to, to some degree, like share some values or some commonality with you, right? Like I think it'd be incredibly difficult for you to talk to like uh, a Swahili guy who only spoke Swahili, just because you wouldn't be able to communicate,
Well, that's a
right?
language barrier, right? That's
Right.
not necessarily a philosophical barrier.
No, but I
Yeah.
think to go back to the tribalism point, like in that creates like the schisms. And a perfect example, at least for me, was that like while I speak Spanish fluently, when I speak to folks who are native Spanish speakers, the nuance, right? My comfort with with the American or the English language is just it's not the same, and so my personality automatically changes, right? My
Yeah.
personality isn't permanent; it changes, right? And so when I am my authentic self, even in that iteration, it may not jive with who they think they're speaking to because I just can't communicate in that way. And so I think the people that we have these really long lasting relationships or bonds with, what we call our tribe, right? My wife, if I'm married, or my husband, if I'm married, right? It's these people who we have like this authentic connection to, where we're like, it's really just common, right? We're both in common, talking in common. And I think as you sort of spread out the nucleus, right, of that relationship, there's these other relationships, right, that sort of burgeon out. But they're the folks on the outskirts of your biggest circle of people that you know, those are the people that you probably don't want to talk to, right? And like that, and the question then becomes like, why don't you want to talk to them? Because they're so far removed from who you think you are that it doesn't like you will never find commonality. And it's because their sort of circle is so far away from yours that it's like their universe is X and your universe is Y, and like it just won't work. And so like while communication can happen, you will never get to the authenticness of that person. And for me, like that's okay too.
I don't know if I agree with that. Um, but I see your point. So a couple of things that's come up
Mm-hmm.
as you were talking is one is your authentic self, right? And I think you said your personality changes, and I think so. I think who you are with your family is one sort of aspect or one side of you, and who you are with maybe down in South America is sort of a different sides of you come out, and but it's still you. right?
Why?
Um,
So, or which is the genuine you if there's multiple
I
sides?
don't think, I think they're both genuine.
You
I
think
think,
so?
yeah, yeah. I think you can accommodate to different situations in order for you to be able to communicate. Let's just, stick to communication. In order for you to communicate with someone, whether it's they're speaking a different language or different dialect, or just different vernacular. You're speaking, you and I, we both speak English, but sometimes, just as earlier, we were defining the word planning differently, right? So yeah,
Hmm.
so we weren't necessarily like, but we got there eventually, but we had to sort of uh, go through that. So you know um Yeah, so you adjust to different situations. So if you're not seeing eye to eye, or you're talking, you're communicating with someone, and you're not coming to an agreement, or even to an understanding of the differences, right? Um, I think your behavior will change accordingly if what you want is to come to an understanding of some sort, right? But somebody like your family or your close friends who you spend time with, hours and hours, years and years, you you are speaking. Eventually, you sort of understand each other's language, right? And we get the nuances. Like, you may not have said anything in particular, but you reacted, or your face changed, and if I had spent enough time with you, I know exactly what that means, right? So, and so, like, I think people with whom we have a deeper connection with, maybe we don't have to try as hard uh, to communicate or to convey. Like, I could give you one word sentences or one word answers and you get it, or whatever. But with some people, who are not familiar with you, you may have to explain your answer. But they're
Yeah.
both you.
And so then I would ask, like, do you think that you don't change?
I change all the time.
So then who's getting your authentic self?
They're all authentic.
But you're always changing.
I mean, I'm not changing from like um the changes are subtle, right? It's not like I am a extrovert. Well, I can't be. I can't be extrovert and I can be introvert, but I think I'm mainly an introvert. Uh but with extrovert tendencies at times. Whatever. uh I mean, but okay. So I don't think your personality changes so dramatically that it's unrecognizable,
You
right?
think so?
I think the changes are subtle, right? So it's still you. It's just you accommodating a different situation.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I hear what you're saying, and like I thought the exact same thing as you for a number of years, and then it's only through this year of COVID that I've had a lot of time to think about it. And the more I think about it, is that my idea of myself um, is constantly changing,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so if that idea is constantly changing, then the people that interact with me only see a fraction of what that old personality or current personality is. And so they form these ideas on in their mind about who I am based on either limited or intensive interactions, to your point. But at any second, I can choose to be somebody else. And like there's actually like a psychological disorder, which is multiple personality disorder, right? Where
Or borderline. Yeah, borderline personality disorder also has.
right,
Yeah.
right. And so if for me, if that's the case, then my idea of myself, again, just being honest with who I am, it doesn't exist. It can be anything. and I can change it at any point, because tomorrow I can wake up and I'll change my hair so visually people see me differently. I'll express myself differently. I'll buy different clothes because I want to be seen differently, and I'll express myself differently. Or I'll just start talking differently, or I'll start thinking differently, or I'll start, and so like, because of that, then people's experience of me, as long as it's congruent with what they're expecting, then everything is okay. Once it's incongruous, then there's an issue, and then it's just like, this is
Yeah.
the person I married for 15 years. Who are they? They're all different now all of a sudden. Or, JJ is not the planner. Are you kidding me? Like, this is all I've known of you. Like, right? And so this idea of personality not being permanent is so in tune with me, because the person who's planning 5 years to be X person is clearly hoping that they change, so that in 5 years they're either married, have a different job, have a whole completely different life than what they have now, because their personality is going to have to be different. And I think it's only when we're fighting to keep a sense of ourselves and not be okay with this ambiguity around it, where like all these like just like schisms begin to happen. This cognitive dissonance happens.
Yeah, I think you bring up a good point, and to this I would agree that so I think, when you brought up the word authentic, um maybe I kind of took it a certain way. Maybe it's sort of the common parlance of that word, right? And I actually I don't particularly like that uh word and the way it's commonly used, because I feel like in just using that word and the way it's commonly used feels fake. So it is anti-authentic. I feel like we could parse into that if you want at some point. But anyway, the well, parse into that. I think that's wrong. I think you parse it out, right? Let's be
Mm-hmm.
grammatical here. Yeah. Um, but anyway, I think um, I think we're constantly, continually, and maybe indefinitely, maybe till we die, um, trying to figure out who we are. Um,
But do
I,
you know why? Can you have you tried to figure out why we're constantly trying to figure out who we are?
I mean, I think we may have ideas of who we are in any particular given moment, right? And we'll say things like, or we'll think things like, "Oh, I don't want to do that because that's not me," or and we throw these thoughts and sentiments out very casually. Um, it's a way of sort of deciding uh, that you're going to actually participate in something or not, right? Like, let's say, like, I'm not somebody, like, I will never go bungee jumping. I will go skydiving, but I will never go bungee jumping. There's something about that particular series of motions that just disturbs me and frightens me. So I will never do that. So I could say something like, "Oh, I don't want to go bungee jumping. It's because it's not me," right? So in common parlance, I could say that, and people will sort of generally understand what I mean, right? That's sort of a sort of a trite example, but you know, but I think um to really know oneself, I don't know what that requires. That actually requires a lot, I think, if you think about it, because you're looking at yourself. You have to look at yourself through many different lenses. I don't know why I'm getting emotional.
It's a good thing. We're hitting something real.
Hey, this happened in one other podcast. I'm gonna be known as the emotional host. um, yeah, yeah, that's sort of a halfway thought. But I'm gonna let you jump in there
Yeah, no
while
worries.
I collect myself.
It's okay. I think the authentic self is a, to your point, like it's a misnomer, right? Like the authenticity of who I am
Yeah.
is only available moment to moment, um, and it's only visible with whomever I'm experiencing my life with, even if it's just myself, right? So like I can't
Yeah.
know who my authentic self is by itself. It's only in relation to something else, much like your ego, right? Like your ego doesn't know itself only in relation to something else, whether it's somebody else you're competing or your job or like something else, right? And so like my authentic self, it doesn't exist. Like this, my idea of who I am just is not here, and that's okay. Um, I think it's something that people just want to get their arms wrapped around because like it helps them sort of like figure out their values or like these big ideas of who they are. And then once they figure out, or this is who I am, or these are the foundational values that I hold, then like they have this like sort of certainty where they're like, well, the circumstances could change, but as long as I'm true to myself, then I'll be okay. And so for me, like this authentic self and who you are, just it doesn't exist. And being comfortable with this idea that you can change who you are at a split second, um, it's so liberating because you have never seen me get angry or to the point where I would kill somebody,
Yeah.
right? You've never seen me kill somebody, but there is,
Have
I'm
you?
sure, no, but I'm sure that if my daughter's life is in danger, I will do whatever I can
Yep.
in that moment to make sure that she's not okay, including killing somebody. I've never been there. Hopefully, I'll never get there. But I know deep down that that is a possibility, and I am personally aware that that's going to be an outcome. Like I'm just aware of it.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. So to say things like, I could never kill, or I could never do this, or I can't imagine, ever doing this. I mean, that last statement may be true. Maybe you can't imagine it, but the possibility exists. Given the right set of circumstances, we could all be liars, we could all be murderers, and we could all be thieving, psychopaths, whatever. Thieving psychopath, that doesn't make sense. But anyway.
Under the right circumstances, you'll go bungee jumping. That's the point, even if it's not you.
Right, no, I just use that as an example.
Yeah,
It's not a choice I will willingly make if I'm forced to make it under, like, under threat of death or something. Maybe. But even then, I would rather you shoot me, than me go bungee jumping. I am that, against it. For me. Other people
yeah,
do it, and that's
totally.
fine.
But my point is that like this idea that the authentic self is infallible and it's immovable and it's with you forever, like this idea of a soul, just it doesn't resonate with me. I don't think your authentic self is ever found. I don't think it's ever going to be found.
I think you get glimpses of it throughout your life, and maybe, I don't know. I think there are certain moments where, um, it's kind of revealed. But then again, here's the thing. Like I was alluding to before, it's, your I think parts of you come out in different circumstances. I think, you know, um like you were like the example you were saying earlier, like, you would not ordinarily kill someone, but if your daughter's life was at jeopardy and the only way to prevent her from that harm is to kill someone, you would absolutely do it. um Now, in that moment, you know, a part of you came out, right? So it's not, but that act, or that part of you that came out in that situation, does not necessarily define you,
Right.
but it is an aspect of you, right?
But is it authentic?
Sure, I would say so.
So then if every part of you is authentic, then no part of you is authentic.
No, that's not necessarily true. I think, I think, I think you're not authentic if you're lying to yourself.
How do you know?
That's a good question. You don't always know. Yeah.
And I would say that when you knowingly lie to yourself, you are touching your authenticity and rejecting it. right?
Yes. When you knowingly lie to yourself or to someone else, then you are consciously rejecting the authenticity of that, of yourself, of that person, and of that relationship. Yeah.
Because
Um,
in the moment you're
yeah.
lying about a situation or a circumstance, right? Whether it's a white lie or a big lie, right? Like, but that's why I'm a firm believer that your authentic self just doesn't exist. Like, there's a liberating aspect that you can be whoever you want to be at any point, and the people just need to accept that. Like, there are some people that do crazy shit that has no explanation, and like that's them being authentically themselves, and that's okay. Like,
Um, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think on a practical level, that's true. Um,
so why take anything personally? I don't take it personally.
oh, right, 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 right. Yeah. I actually try not to. I think this is what I used to do. And then as I got older, I could care less about it. Like, I care less about what other people think and what other people say. But when I was younger, I actually took to heart people who didn't like me or who would say things about me that were negative, and would take to heart, not because my feelings were hurt, but trying to understand why they were saying that. Is it something that I did, or is it something that I said, you know, or they just don't like, short girls, or, whatever. They had a bad experience with somebody who looked like me before. I have no idea, but there's something. Everything comes from somewhere, right? It's very few things are completely have no context.
Right.
Um, so yeah, so I would like actually try to understand, and maybe do things differently. Like, if I cared about that person or cared about the relationship, um, I mean, not necessarily in a very emotional way. Like, for example, like your coworkers, you care that you keep a non-hostile environment, right? With somebody that you work with, because you see them every day, right? You don't want to have to get
Mm-hmm.
into a fight every time you see them. So therefore, you want to maintain a certain level of civility. So therefore, if somebody is saying something or acting negatively toward me, then I would want to try to figure out where that's coming from, and maybe I could do something to make things better. So on that level, right? But then here's the thing, that's not always. I mean, I have gotten hurt, my feelings hurt because of what people said and did. So I'm not impervious to that. But you're right. Yeah, there's really no reason or point to take things personally, especially to the point where you are, um you're wallowing in it. Yeah.
Well, for me, like it goes back to this like idea that somebody's personality again is not permanent. There's no authenticity. There's no authenticity to their reality. Like, everybody thinks they're the heroes of their own stories, and so
Yeah.
why do I care, or and like why does it bother me what people say about me or how they feel or interact with me? It's like it's not about me, it's about them. So like I would ask you, like, when was it in your life, or if you can remember, where you stopped caring what people think or thought about you?
Well, definitely in my 50s, but I'm still in my early 50s, so it hasn't been that long. um I don't know. That's a good question. I think it was a gradual thing. I don't think it was any one particular, like, incident or point in time that happened. I think it must have happened in my 40s, because my 30s I was still trying to, care about. So, uh, when I say I cared about what people said and thought, not to the point where I'm trying to get them
Right,
to like me, like, they like
right.
me or they don't, whatever. But it's really trying to figure out where people were coming from and trying to understand their point of view. Um, yeah, I think I was always like that to some extent, even when I was little. That I didn't necessarily care if people liked me. Um, but I did want to understand where they were coming from. Um, and if they didn't like me, I didn't try to make them like me, or I was never I wasn't really a people pleaser. I was always a bit of an oddball.
Me too. That's how we get along.
I know. So when you're an oddball and you accept your weirdness and your oddity, then you also accept that you're not everyone's cup of tea. So therefore, why try? Just be yourself, and somebody will like you. Um, but yeah, but I think I don't know. I don't know when it was exactly. I think it was definitely gradual, and as time passed, I think I think maybe part of the motivation was that at some point I think at some point I have experienced enough of life and enough of different kinds of people that uh, that I kind of had a general understanding, enough of a general understanding that I didn't need to really spend, you know, as much time and energy to trying to figure people out. And also, as I got older, people in my surrounding got older too. I you know, deal less and less with people who are significantly younger than you. Uh, Present company not included, or I don't know if I said that right, but anyway. Um, and then then what you're dealing with is simply getting stuff done, right? So like I didn't really have the time or the patience to deal with people who are disagreeable, right?
Mm.
If it's at the workplace, then you have to work with them, then fine. Then it is really about getting the task done, not necessarily you liking me or vice versa, right? It really is about the job, and that's it. It doesn't have to get personal. But if it's, in sort of personal circles, like I think I became less patient with people who were like, well, okay, fine, then I really don't need to understand you. It's like I don't have the time anymore, because I think the older you get, time becomes more precious. Um, and you rather spend the time with people that get along with you. Um, and because I've done enough of, um, thinking and analyzing in the prior 30 years of my life, or whatever, how many years it was, that I feel like I paid my dues, and now I just want to enjoy things.
So tribalism is okay only once
Well, no,
you pay the dues.
right. I think that's the thing, right? I think your tribe, your family, well, your tribe starts with your family. That's your most immediate sort of surrounding. Um and then your friends, your extended family, and your friends, and and as you get older and you move through different phases of your life, you find different people, whether it's classmates or coworkers, or what have you. Hobbyists, or whatever. So you find different people, and at some point I think that is uh your tribe, for lack of a better word, is extremely important and necessary, and also beneficial, if it's a healthy tribe, um, for your own development and your own sense of self and your own sense of security, and yeah. And but once you get to a certain point, and you do adopt, you know whatever it is that your tribe is thinking, what their values are, what their beliefs are, and your sort of accepted behaviors, and things like that. But then you get to a certain point that you do become your own individual, right? And you get to a point where you start thinking for yourself, and you start sort of, um, you know while you may still hold the same values, you may also question them and think more critically of them and test them to see if they are, you know, um, if they're in fact true, if they're in fact valid, or beneficial, or whatever standard that you want to hold it to. Um, so you don't, you know, your association might still be there, especially when it comes to your, bloodline, your, like, your family and your relatives. But you don't necessarily have to agree with everything, or you don't necessarily have to accept everything just because that's where you came from.
I think it's interesting that you're saying that, because I think through COVID and through the political sort of like silos that everybody's in, like
Yeah.
especially now through COVID, more people are cutting off their families because they disagree with their views than before,
See,
right?
I
Like,
disagree with that. I know
but
everyone.
yeah.
Every once in a while, I read posts like, they'll post a statement, and like, if you disagree with this, then it's fine to unfriend me. I'm fine with that. Like, I disagree with that way of thinking. I think you should continue to be exposed to different people with different ideas. I think only then do we actually keep growing. Because I think once you stop,
Mhm.
um, so this is where society today is regressing back into their tribes, which is now redefined. Right? They have redefined who what their tribe is, or who their
Mhm.
tribe is, and but the behaviors, they're regressing back to it. Um, and going back into your mother's womb, essentially. But I think that's wrong. I think that it's the wrong direction.
Um, I don't know. Like, again, like, I don't reserve judgment. Like, I don't know if it's good or bad or right or wrong. Like, I think it just is what it is, for them, right? And I think more so what you're just describing is like where this idea of authenticity just doesn't exist, right? Like, if people's polarization was affected in 4 years by one person's sort of characteristic charisma and characteristics, then who you authentically thought you knew for 30 years or 20 years or 5 years, right, was is no longer there, right? Like, they are authentically somebody else. And so when this idea of like, I'm going to tribalize my political beliefs and only live in my echo chambers, um, I would say, like, that is people really trying to be authentic to themselves, right? So, like, if someone disagrees with you so much so that it creates such a cognitive dissonance in your mind to hear their perspective, then that's telling you, if you're that person says unfriend me if you disagree with me, that should tell you that, hey, like, you're touching upon something that's incredibly authentically you right now, that you want to guard so much so that you're willing to sever ties with people who were part of your community. And I think
Yeah.
that's where the interesting thing is, as opposed to whether it's right or wrong. It's just like, what about this idea that you want to post or that you want to comment or tell the world, right? Because you want the attention, you want people to see that you're saying this. What about that is so important to you that you're willing to burn bridges over? And why is that important to you? And I think that's where the conversations don't happen, right? I think, to your point,
Yeah.
people get stuck on like unfriending me as opposed to not talking about it.
Yeah. So let me clarify. When I say it's wrong, I think by that what I mean is that only feeds into, perpetuates this polarization. It's making the polarization worse, and it's creating thicker walls, and it's making it harder for us to, you know, have a dialogue and have a meaningful conversation, because immediately what you're doing is, I don't want to talk to you, and that's it. It doesn't matter. There's no nuance there. Well, I might disagree with you on this point that you posted about, but you and I may agree on something else. So where is that? So it's like, just because I disagree with you on this one point, that all of my other opinions are, basically it's thrown out the window. It's reducing people to, one particular belief or one
Hmm.
particular, set, particular value. But I think we're vastly more complicated than that.
Hmm. No, I don't disagree. I completely agree with you. And I think just to further that idea, it's just because of COVID, right? Everybody is more remote. Everybody is not interacting face to face, right? And so everybody becomes their own sound bites of whatever they put out to the world. And this question of authenticity never really was in the mainstream as much as it is today, because people have
Really?
this yeah, well, it's I think we're hearing more of it again with woke culture, and then this idea like, well, he didn't mean that tweet, or that comment was taken out of context. And I think it's because people are sort of just reading what people are posting. And so had we gone back to sort of outside of just the internet, right? Like when you go to a bar and you talk to people, strangers, yeah, there could be one person that has a very like catatonic, really ugly perspective, but then that would incite conversation, and then like there would be dialogue that would happen back and forth, and so then that's where you would have, you either fight them or you would have a good conversation with them, right? And so
Yeah.
I just, because people can't have communication online, they become sort of tribalized more online, but outside of just the network, people are people.
Yeah, social media definitely amplifies. Uh, Now, how much of it is actually real, I'm not sure. And I don't know if there are any sociologists or, are actually studying this. That, the reality on social media is hyper reality. It is not actual reality. It is
Right.
so hyped up that, and you could easily get sucked into it too, like, and just kind of get sucked into the hype and sort of join the bandwagon. I very intentionally step away from that, and I
Mhm.
actually intentionally don't participate, even though when I think it may be a good cause or a good message to propagate, because it's just so hyped. um yeah, so, but anyway, that's my choice, and some people
Mhm.
may disagree or even dislike, that particular choice that I made. But going back to a earlier point that you made, that, when I said this is the wrong direction that it's going to, and you said, well, that's a value judgment, and so it is just what it is. If somebody decides to unfriend you because you hold a different belief, then, you know you don't take it personally. Uh well, that's coming from somewhere, right? And you're absolutely right. And I think that is, a proper characterization of that. I think, oh, yes, I take your point, like when I say things like it's wrong, or, whatever, that is making a value statement, and that also does not necessarily help, uh, you know, um, promote a dialogue.
Yeah, and like that's that's why I think like this conversation I've been really conscious about sort of not saying right, wrong, best, worst, like just because people want to know that what they believe in, what they say and what they do is the right thing to do, right? In their
Yeah.
narrative. Um, but what's normal for the spider is chaos for the fly,
Yeah.
right? So at what point are we all going to agree? So like if we can't agree on what's right or wrong or normal or not normal, then like let's just take it for what it is. And if I don't want to be part of that because again I don't care, or it doesn't affect me, then I'm gonna go in a different direction, and that's okay as well. Like that's the consequence of somebody's decision by posting these things if people unfriend them, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, that was just one example. And
Yeah.
well, it was an example of, well, it could also be that this particular incident I'm thinking of, and because I know the person to some extent, uh, that it could very well be that he was just really tired of explaining himself to people who don't agree with him. So therefore, he, just said, "Hey, whatever. I'm tired of trying to explain myself. So if you don't agree with, that's fine. Unfriend me. I don't care." It could be coming from that.
Could
And
be.
yeah, that's very valid. But I still would argue. Do you even need to say that? You know?
It's all about him saying it. That's the
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
He felt he needed to say it, or she needed to say it. And if that's what they needed to say at the moment, then that's what they
That's
needed to
what they
say.
needed to say. Yeah. But my point is saying those things doesn't help. Um
Only if you unfriend them, right? If you look at them with grace and compassion, it's just like
yeah.
this person's having a rough day. Like you know this person better than I would if I would have read that, and like I wouldn't care. But like you have a reasoning for why you think they did that, and if that reasoning is good enough for you, then you're not gonna unfriend them. You would understand and you'd be
Oh
compassionate.
no. Yeah. I actually don't unfriend people. There are plenty of people that I disagree with, and I intentionally do not unfriend them. Or because here's the thing, I actually want to hear what they think and why they think it, so
It's interesting because I think you give people more credit. Like I think a lot of people know what they think. I don't think they know why they think it. And like that's very easily like why like I unfriend people. I'm like, listen, you're an idiot. Like you don't know what you're talking about. Like let me. I don't want to deal with this anymore.
wow, you're much more advanced in years than I am. You've gone straight from your 20s to your curmudgeon days. Your wide-eyed, bushy-tailed days to your curmudgeon days.
Right.
It took
Totally.
me 30 years to get there.
But honestly, like people have a lot of things to say, but it's just like, why are you saying this? Like, what experience is bringing you to say this, or believe this, or think this? And it's just like, well, I read it, or I don't know. I'm like, well, you like that's not a good reason.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Um, yeah, yeah. A lot of people just kind of say things. I know this is a just a very silly example, but there was one post. It wasn't somebody I knew. You know, oh, actually, no. Somebody I knew actually forwarded this and reposted it, and that's how I found out. But this woman was, lettuce, like romaine lettuce. She put it in some hot water, microwaved it for a few seconds, and then she was peeling off the epidermis of the lettuce and saying, "Look, this is what the government is doing, is putting plastic on your lettuce leaves." And I'm looking at that, I'm like, what an idiot. And I look at the comments on her post, and there were so many of them. I'm like, oh my gosh, didn't you take junior high school science class? And then, of course, in response to that, other people made videos of, here, this is called an epidermis. It's actually part of the lettuce. You eat it. um, why did I bring this up? What was my point?
People don't know why they think things or why they believe in things.
Oh, right. So yeah, no, people like have this need to, I think, say things. You know, I get it. And I get this impulse that people have of wanting to get things off their chest. But again, I think that's an impulse, and I think this is where I think social media has sort of lifted that veneer of decorum, social decorum that we all have to live with. Bumping up against each other physically. Like you probably any given person on social media who spews out stuff, they probably would not say any of those things, or at least half the things, to someone to their face you
Right.
know yeah, and yet we do it. So this is where I think different circumstances lend themselves to different sorts of behavior. But if
Yeah.
you, but I think this is where, so I guess, on one hand, you you adapt to different circumstances and different behaviors come out. On the other hand, I'm not somebody who would actually attack someone on social media because I would not do that. If they posted something I disagree with, I might ask them about it, you know? But I wouldn't call them an idiot unless I was willing to call them an idiot to their face.
Yeah, and honestly, like this whole idea of like, are you your authentic self when you're online, right? And like I thought about this quite a bit,
Yeah.
right? And it's for me, I haven't really landed on anything else because when you're behind the computer screen, you can be anybody you want, right?
Even
You can
more
be the
so. Yeah, even more
yeah,
so.
even
Yeah.
exactly. You can be unhinged, uninhibited. You can have a pseudonym and you can have burner accounts and whatever. You can do whatever you want. And so I've been thinking about this a lot, and it's just like that is the authenticity of this person. The person who wanted to get the attention for putting out this video either wanted attention because they needed it, wanted to sort of give the world their opinion because that's what they authentically believe. And like, do we hold them accountable for the moment, or do we hold them in compassion and saying like, this didn't really make sense. Like they were acting out. And the same way that you would see like an adult or a kid have a tantrum, it's just like, all right, they were having a tantrum. They worked it out. Do we let it go? And so for me, like that, I honestly think that people's authenticity is there because they can play with so many different beliefs and ideas. I could go on 4chan right now and see what, neo Nazis are talking about. And if that resonated with me, I would have discovered something about myself that I didn't know before. Right. And like I can just think of so many people doing the same thing, playing the sim games or playing like World of Warcraft where they can be go into these worlds and be whomever they want. And it's just like my whole point is that online gives you the freedom, but people don't realize that they can do this in real life as well. You can be whoever you want. And that's to bring us full circle to the idea of personality and authenticity.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I think those are very valid points. Here's what's interesting is I think the possibilities that the internet had opened up when it opened up is that it could have been used, and it I think largely it is used for good stuff. Um,
By
but there's
whom?
also a lot of abuses. And here's what I'm also wondering. I mean, you mentioned 4chan, and by the way, 4chan is not only neo Nazis.
No.
There are other people there too.
Okay. I
I don't.
apologize for any 4chan followers who.
No, no. I'm not on 4chan, and I only know about it peripherally. I don't know. I don't. But 4chan is like I kind of see 4chan as like one step beyond Reddit. But maybe, hey, maybe that's an unfair characterization right there. I just I barely I actually technically I had a Reddit account for a while, but I only got on it recently when the whole GameStop thing started happening, and I just wanted to get on those subreddits to see what people are actually saying. But anyway, yeah, it's a lot of uh, yeah, whatever. Uh, shoot. Oh yes. So the internet. And I think here's where here's an environment, a virtual environment, but with real people, right? So it's not like true VR, right? Um, but here's a sort of a virtual reality with actual people behind them that you could interact with, and it could have been something, a safe place for us to really experiment and explore in a positive way, in a productive way. And while that is happening, it's also revealing a lot of ugliness that is frankly within all of us, you know. And I think here's the thing. why don't I harass someone online? Is it because it's not in me to do so? Or is it because I'm consciously choosing not to do so? Right?
Or because you haven't been bugged enough about something that's going to trigger you to respond like that. The same way, like my daughter's life hasn't been in danger where I'm going to kill somebody. It just hasn't happened.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. I think a lot of things have bugged me. I just choose to ignore it. Right?
Well, and I think this is to the
Yeah.
point. This is like the corollary that like we're just not like decision making or robots, right? We just don't do shit without either filters or variables or like nuance, right? To your point of context. But like I think the one thing that we forget about social media is that while we think it's user generated universes, it's actually controlled by
Yes.
entities and corporations, right? And so because of that, like part of me wonders whether the algorithms of the things that I see on Twitter or Reddit or Facebook or Instagram are purposely sort of done so that I interact with the application more. And if I am the person who has an ego need to fight, I'm going to see more things that get me riled up and commenting and fighting. But if I see more things that are, that I will interact with that are more pleasant to me, that are not sort of aggressive, then I will see more of that. And so then I really do wonder, like, why don't I see the comments of this one person who I used to see all the time? Now I don't see it anymore.
No, I actually hate the algorithm behind Facebook and all these other social media platforms. And what you say is absolutely true. Have you seen the documentary, The Social Dilemma on
Hmm.
Netflix? Yeah, that explains it all. It is
Right,
absolutely, this is absolutely curated uh,
right,
content specifically targeted to you.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're not gonna see people that you would argue with because that's not gonna keep you on their platform for more than that one fight, right? Or more than that one instance. And so Facebook having maybe 12 years of my history, right, or 15 years of my data, knows that I want
You
to see
know,
something.
that's interesting. I didn't actually think about it at that level. Why don't I see certain people's posts on my stream? There's only literally like handful of people that I see over and over and over again. And I always thought it was because the more you like someone or interact with someone's post, the more their stuff will show up on your stream. I thought it was just
Hmm.
that, but it goes beyond that. It goes
Correct.
to who they are and what they prefer, and the content that they kind of prefer does not mesh with mine, so therefore I do not see
Right.
theirs. Ah, that's interesting. So that means all these people, this is why, I'm gonna have
You're
to look at
catering to yeah.
I'm gonna have to look at that list.
And then actively seek out the people that you probably disagree with and see if you can change the algorithm. But you're going to revert back to your old behaviors, right? Like everybody does.
Yeah,
So,
I actually have done that. I mean, I don't do it as much anymore because I'm actually not on social media that much. But I have in the before I have gone sought out people intentionally, went to their account, see what they posted on their wall, and then intentionally like a bunch of them so that maybe the algorithm will like shift. But maybe I just didn't do that enough to make a dent in the algorithm. I don't know.
because it
Yeah.
wasn't you, like the algorithm has your authentic self in that moment. And
Oh,
when
shut
you
up.
change,
No.
what,
Oh,
when
shut your
you,
mouth. No,
when
no,
you change, your algorithm will change with it.
no, 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 no. It thinks it knows who I am based on based on caricatures that they have created for all of humanity, right? I actually
Hmm.
don't agree with that. I think
Interesting.
I think it's making certain assumptions that certain things will either enrage me or please me or whatever. That's why it's sending, these things. Based on whatever data that I have put in there so far. Um, but I think that is based on certain assumptions that it makes, or however the algorithm
Hmm.
is constructed. So I don't necessarily agree that. I think it probably does an excellent job of predicting what I might like, what I might
Probably.
react to. Yeah. But I don't think it really knows me. No.
Well, yeah,
Or maybe this is
I
just
yeah.
my ego accepting, like refusing to accept like AI is superior than my own mind.
You know, I do agree that you're probably one step, but not even a full step ahead of the AI. And that's because, like I said, like a personality or authenticity just doesn't exist, right? So, like, what you were into the beginning of COVID was probably what you have never been into in a March to June timeframe ever in your life that the algorithm could have tracked because the world had changed and you had to change with it. So the JJ Co of COVID between March and June was outside the algorithm. But as the algorithm got to learn your behaviors through that time period, November JJ is probably a little different, but it was much closer. The algorithm was much closer to who you were then than at the beginning of COVID. And the only reason I think this is because, like, all the stuff that's being tracked on Facebook is not just within the ecosystem of Facebook, right? It goes into your web browser history, like it
Sure.
goes into all these different things that you're not even aware of. So, like, if you saw something on TV that made you want to Google it, now you see the ads for that thing that you Googled. Now Facebook sees the things that you Googled, and so, like, they're all interacting with each other. So at some point they'll have JJ Co from from February 13th, but maybe it's already March. And so, like, they're maybe 2 weeks behind who you were or what you were into. I don't know.
Ah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I try not to think about all that too much because it actually frightens me.
But for me, it liberates me because it's just like my authentic self doesn't exist. So the computer will never get me. I honestly wish that Facebook and Instagram could cater me a specific targeted ads that would let me know what I want in the future. That would be the best gift.
And and I think that's the thing, right? Because like I don't want to see all this crap. I mean, I'm not even talking about the ads. I'm talking about like the people. Like I want to hear from certain people, but I don't see their posts anymore unless I
Right.
intentionally go to their accounts. And yeah, that's just, I don't know.
Because the JJ that wanted to interact with them was so 4 months ago. That JJ is no longer around.
No, well, my point is this, because Facebook is only showing me what it thinks that I am, that I have no choice but to play within those parameters. And I'm just reinforcing the assumptions that it made in the first place, which is wrong, which is skewed or wrong, or I don't know.
But you still use it, right?
I mean, because I'm lazy.
Well, but you still use it. And so, like, the more you use it, the more that, so then it becomes like, are you influencing Facebook or does Facebook influence you? And like, I still want to give autonomy to the person.
I think on a practical level, I think Facebook probably influences me because again, it's not giving me all the choices that I would like. It only gives me certain choices, and as long as I don't proactively go seek things out, then it's gonna continue limiting my choices.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with you. And then the question then becomes like, once you're no longer that person that was seeking out those things, you will seek out new things and the
Yeah.
algorithm will change. But like, I believe that the person initiates the changing algorithm as opposed to the algorithm changing me. Like, when I no longer am interested in CrossFit because I do CrossFit, when I no longer I can't do it, I get hurt for 6 months or something, I will stop clicking on CrossFit things. I will stop seeing CrossFit posts and all my friends that are in CrossFit. I will see other things because I will be looking for other things because I'm no longer that. The
Oh,
algorithm
I see.
won't know when I stop doing something. Yeah.
I see what you mean. I see what you mean. Yes. Um okay, yeah. So then yeah. So to that end then I still need to then proactively, right, right. So as long as I proactively seek out new things, then the algorithm will adjust to fit my preferences, my new preferences, whatever they may be. Yeah, as it, but if I blindly click on things that only it shows me, then I'm only reinforcing that algorithm.
Yeah, and but it will always be changing because you always change. And like that's what I want to like initially like I don't think like there's this conception that there's huge disinformation campaigns will affect people's beliefs and stuff. And like that's pretty much saying that I can work with Facebook to target you to make you believe something that you don't believe now, but over time I can make you believe it. And while that could happen, like I still want to believe that I will have autonomy over my thoughts and like I can reject it at any point.
Hmm. One would like to think, yes. I mean,
Well, yeah,
I agree with you. I agree with you that we have that ability. I don't think we always choose to exercise it.
because we have an idea of ourselves. The trick is to let go of that, and then you're not sort of praying to the gods of Facebook. You're not praying to the gods of like the algorithm. Now you're just saying like, if I am nothing and I'm random, then I can be whatever and I can do whatever.
Hmm. Yeah,
Just helps me sleep at night better.
it is. I would say, yeah. On a philosophical level, I think it is very freeing to just let go. It's very. Is it Taoism or is it Buddhism that you just kind of let go of everything?
More like Buddhism.
Yeah, yeah. Very Buddhism of you, Buddhist.
Buddhist. Yeah, I like
Yeah,
it. I think it just resonates for me really well because, you know, only when I let go of things do I feel more free.
that
It's
is
all,
true.
yeah,
No, that's absolutely true. I think um, I think the things that we hold on to often are the things that hold us back.
because we want them to, right? We have these ideas
Yeah.
of like the infallible self that's not going to change. Like I have my foundational beliefs and that's going to carry my personality, my characteristics, right, forever. And people really want to hold on to that, but it's like if society broke down and we had to kill each other for food and you still believe that killing was wrong, like you would die. And like I'm sure your body
Yes.
in its self-preservation manner would say, fuck it, we have to stop believing this. Life sucks, kill somebody, eat. And like you would do it.
I'm gonna be one of those people who get killed and eaten.
How would you like to be cooked?
How would I like to be cooked? Over an open flame, rotisserie. stick a stick a stick through me, and one of those. Yeah.
That's funny. I would hope that I do like it'd be fun, like it'd be like a show or something. I don't know if it's hibachi or like, like just like plate of food or something. Yeah, like there's John's nose like on the griddle.
This is funny. It's we've gone down the rabbit hole to the surreal.
Totally.
Yeah, I definitely make me spicy. Lots of pepper, hot sauce, whatever. Spicier the better.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
funny. Are you still baking or
Um,
making puddings?
no, I haven't made the mango pudding in a long time. I should have, but I didn't. But I'm home. I mean, I don't really go out, so yeah. I can't remember the last time. Oh, maybe a few weeks ago we got takeout. But in general, yeah, I cook every day. I'm kind of tired of cooking. And the thing is, like, my repertoire is not that large, so it's kind of like the same thing. I think my mother is getting sick of my cooking. I could tell because every once in a while, like, she'll go out and get stuff, that I don't normally cook. And that's a signal, like, yeah, I'm kind of sick of your cooking because you cook the same thing every day.
Oh, that's funny. And how's been the interpersonal sort of relationships living, through COVID for you?
uh, yeah, I think we've gone beyond cabin fever. I'll, I'll just leave it at that and leave it to the imagination of the listeners to interpret what that means.
Yeah, it's been incredibly challenging, I gotta say, but it's been a real blessing to see my daughter grow like every
Yeah.
day for the last year.
How
I
old
was
is she
telling some,
now?
she's 3.5. She'll be 4 in June.
Wow. Wow. It's been 4 years already.
Yeah, and I was just telling somebody that, had COVID not happened, I would have probably spent 3 hours a day with her during the week, right? Pick her up from daycare, have dinner, and then put her to bed. And then on the weekends, I'd spend a couple more hours with her, but we'd be going out, I'd be going to the gym, just living our lives like before. And so like it would have taken me maybe 6 to 7 years to accumulate all the hours that I've spent
Mm.
with her for a year. So that bond that would have taken me, into her elementary school phase, I've been able to do it in a year. So it's been really, really satisfying.
Yeah. I think that's also, a blessing, and I guess in some cases a burden to some families. Um but if the uh coping mechanisms were in place, uh yeah, definitely people would have like deepened their relationship with their family members. Um, I think in my case, I don't know if it changed much. Um, I think I've definitely have gotten more, become a more of a control freak. I, I think uh, my controlling nature actually came out even more.
But that's different to planning.
Yes, it's different from planning. And I'm actually, I recognize this. And this is one of the things where I see what I'm doing. I see how I'm becoming controlling, and yet somehow I cannot stop myself. So yeah, this is definitely is one of those things where I have become aware of it almost immediately, and yet I'm actually trying to take a step back a little bit more, and kind of let things be. But yeah, but there was a time when I was, um, yeah, it got kind of bad to the point where like even I didn't like me.
Wow. With all the uncertainty, it makes total sense that people want control, right? Like you need to like everything's so out of control, so you need to find some control in what you have.
Yeah, yeah, I guess so. Yeah. But in the process I was driving everybody else crazy. That's the thing.
Well,
Um,
everybody's trying to get control, and if you're both vying for the same, like same control scissors, you're gonna have an argument, right? It's gonna be tough.
yeah. Yeah. Um, but I think but why do we need to control things? That's another whole thing. Um, and it's often that we're trying to control either the situation or other people.
Hmm.
It's you know it's not so much controlling yourself, which is where our focus should be, is controlling ourselves, our reactions, our behavior, our, even our thinking, to
Hmm.
some extent, sometimes need to be reined in, because like being lost in our thoughts, we can spiral into all kinds of nonsense. Um,
And for me, like there's I agree with you, right? And like I think it makes a lot of sense. And like as you can tell, like I'm a thinker, right? And like this whole conversation has been really
no.
heavy because I'm a thinker, and so like for me, the control over my thoughts, I think, again, the biggest thought that has affected my life so far is that everything my body does, including my thoughts, are for self-preservation. Like my body's looking to maintain itself alive. And so with that sort of humility, it's like, why do I care that my grandiosity of my thoughts mean anything to anybody outside of myself right now? It doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just allows me to like have a detachment, from what I think reality is, because again, my reality is very different to somebody else's reality. And so, maybe this is all a dream, and we'll wake up, and that's okay, right? Maybe I can be somebody different tomorrow, and that's okay too.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to be.
Yeah, we're different. Well, by your definition, I think we're different every day.
Yeah, 100%. And one of the most tangible things is I know that when I am 74, I will not be able to CrossFit the way I'm CrossFitting at 32. That's a reality, right? I
Yeah.
can see it coming down the pike. So like, why am I gonna fight aging and getting older when like that's gonna happen? I just need to execute when I'm 74 if I'm still kicking, right? That I'm gonna be living to the best that I can in that moment.
Well,
Like,
actually, here's the thing. If you keep CrossFitting now and you keep doing it until you're 74, I bet you'll be still be able to do CrossFit to some extent. Maybe
yeah,
not like you're doing at 32. Yeah.
but that's the point, right? Like being comfortable with that and letting go of that idea of myself as a 22 or a 32 or a 42-year old when I'm 74. That's where life is,
Mm.
right?
I think yeah, that's probably one thing that I never really sort of denied or resisted is aging. Um I never lied about my age. I always I was always forthcoming about how old I was. And yeah, and the fact that I'm a certain age and you have different abilities now than you had when you were 20 something. Yeah, that never really bothered me. Um
Well, but for me, like that extends to the idea of myself. Like I am going to be a completely different person at 74 than I am at 32. So like, why would that stop? Like, why is time the difference maker? Is it 5 years, 10 years? And so if there is no difference between who I am at if there is a difference between who I am at 74 than who I am at 32, then there's a difference between who I am at 32 in one day and then 32 in 2 days. And so then time as a function is irrelevant. It's moot. It loses its value. So like I'm always changing constantly because life keeps happening to me. It keeps happening for me.
but why are you even thinking about 74?
I don't know. It's just a number.
I
Just
guess
a
I
oh,
guess it's a for instance. Yeah.
right,
It's for the sake of argument, right? Cuz
right.
yeah, cuz if you let go of all that, then it
Doesn't
doesn't
matter.
matter. Yeah, you shouldn't even
Right.
be thinking about it.
No, well, obviously, like you deal with your own mortality, right? Like I have to deal
Yeah.
with my death, my wife's death, my parents dying, my daughter dying. Like we have to deal with those things. So like, how do you make sense of it? And it's just like it's just that's a function of time.
It's also part of life. Um
Mhm.
yeah, it's part of life. Yeah. Yeah, that's the other thing I uh never really shied away from. Like I don't necessarily think death is bad.
I don't
It's
either.
yeah.
I agree with you.
Yeah, it happens, you know. Yeah.
Everything in this world goes through these cycles of life and death and rebornness, right? And like, why would we be any different?
Yeah. Um I'm debating whether or not to bring this up.
Oh, God, are we gonna bring God into it
Oh
or?
no, 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 no.
Oh,
No, no. Well, that's a whole other topic. I that's probably one area where we probably disagree. Uh and no, I was thinking about death and accepting death, like when it
mhm,
happens, however it happens, whether it's through illness or accident or just old age, right?
mhm.
Or somebody actually kills you. I guess that's another way. Yeah, we're going down a morbid rabbit hole now. um,
But it's real. I think it's a real conversation that people really don't talk to. And just so that my take on death, like I think once you die, you die. Like I don't think there's anything after that. But
yeah. And I think well, death is certainly hardest on the people who are left behind. Um, you know, uh, I mean, except for the person who is dying, if they know that they're dying and they don't want to die, then they'll do everything they can to cling onto that, including all kinds of, I don't know, whatever.
But
Um,
why?
right, and that's my point. So, but it's something that's hard to say though, because especially when it comes to illness, people getting cancer, or some kind of terminal illness, and there's all kinds of research, and and programs, and drugs, and all kind procedures, and all kinds of things, that people do to recover, to be cured, you know and all kinds of advances are being made in biotechnology, and um, you know in medicine, to cure diseases, to prolong life, to find treatment, and that sort of thing. Treatment is different. So treatment to make your quality of life, more tolerable
Hmm.
while you're still alive. I kind of see that differently. Um, but saying something like, you know, you get a terminal illness and your fate is death in a matter of months or years or whatever. But here's the thing, that was going to be your fate no matter what. Whether I, contracted an illness or not,
Hmm.
I am going to die at some point.
Hmm.
Um, so to me, that doesn't necessarily change any kind of outlook. But it's hard to say that though, because of loved ones around them. They don't want them to die. It's also hard to say to the person who may feel like they want to beat this. And
Well, yeah, but for that, like, I can't choose for somebody else what they want to do with their
sure,
life. So like, I can only give them my opinion, and if they choose to do something else, then like that's up to them. But for me, like, and that's the only thing I can control is myself, right? Like, I'm gonna die, and that's life, you know.
but to say it like that, right? Okay, so maybe I am. You're right. Maybe I am going beyond myself. Um, yeah. I mean, that's what I believe, but I also feel like but you, I don't know. Here, to say I could say this to you because you're not gonna take it like, oh my gosh, she's suicidal or something, or she's morbid, or like, oh no, why would you think that about you know like, I don't want you to die, that sort of thing. No, 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 that's all sentimentality. That's irrelevant.
Hmm.
That's beside the point. Um, but yeah, but to say that to someone, especially if they're going through something, it's a harsh thing to say. And first of all, I would never say that to, of course now I'm saying it on the podcast, so like everybody's gonna hear this. But I would
No,
never
but
say this to someone, um, especially if they're going through something, whether it's themselves or their family members. Um,
I don't think
and
you should either.
yeah, duh.
Right.
Why would you?
Well, unless they ask you, right? If they like, JJ, I have 6 months to live, or I can try this experimental drug. What do you think I should do?
I
I'd say
would,
like enjoy the six
yeah.
months.
Oh no, I would say, what do you want to do?
Mm,
And if they want to fight it, absolutely fight it.
yeah.
Yeah. It's just not something that I would do. Probably
No,
not.
me neither. Me neither.
Yeah.
Again, like if it's pancreatic cancer or like something that I know that it's gonna like it's terminal. Um, I'd rather spend the 6 months me coming to peace with it, and making sure that it's okay, as opposed to trying to fight it and prolong something that's inevitable.
Oh, interesting. So what if it's some other kind of cancer where it is curable? There's like 90% chance of recovery.
Oh, like prostate cancer when I'm like 40 something, then
Yeah.
yeah, then it's just treatment at that point, right? Like that there's no sort of there's nothing I'm fighting against the wind that's gonna create like, you know, more stress on me than it's already there.
Is your
Yeah,
battery low?
one just died. I still have the other one. I'm good.
Uh, yeah. Um, yeah, I feel like we need to sort of move on to a different topic because um
Sorry, I lost it. Give me a second.
I feel like
Sorry.
if we stay on this, then I'll say more stupid things.
No worries. That's a good break.
um, yeah. So I don't know what else is going on besides life and death and your authentic self.
Um, I've been having a lot of good conversations with my wife mainly. So I think COVID has brought us together. We've been having really just like insightful sort of side of just thoughts and ideas around parenthood, around men, women, sort of who we are as people. And again, it goes on the same things we touched about, like being authentically and like how that doesn't exist for at least for me and how I'm just open to having life happen for me and just being a vessel for that. And being comfortable being uncomfortable with like who I am, I think helped people just relate, right? I think it's only when I try to be a persona or a caricature of who I thought people wanted me to be that have created like all these tension points in my life. So at this point, it's just like, listen, this is who I am today. Like, I'm still living and working. This is what it looks like. Take it or leave it.
Well, but here's the thing. Do you ever run into a situation where I don't know how to relate to you because you're not a, you're not anything.
That's okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's okay. And like if we have nothing to relate to, then like I'm a firm believer that some relationships come and go and like
Sure.
it's all cyclical. And like if I'm at a point in my life that we no longer are relatable, then I hope we can connect again in the future. But if we can't, that's all right.
And I think that happens naturally, right? Like you don't even have to call it out. You know, people who don't relate to you just kind of naturally fall away. Um,
But it needs to happen when you're in a relationship with somebody or with the people in your tribe, right?
what?
Well, sometimes the person you're with is like, I am no longer with that same person that you met, like, and you are no longer the person I want to be with, and like being able to recognize that before the divorce, right, or before the impending sort of chasm, I think is where like you actually have some autonomy over the decision you're making. And the same thing with your tribe, like you may have been a gang member, but now you're reformed or you want to do something else. Like you have to be okay with letting go and mourning the death of that person who you were or who you were with and moving on.
Um, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily use the gang member as an example because that is a bit of an extreme where you have to actively, you know,
Mm-hmm.
divorce yourself from that tribe. Otherwise, they will come after you, you know.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, that's a little different. But I think in normal life situation, I think people just kind of, you know, you sort of drift apart. You know, you don't talk as often, you don't hang out as often, you know, because of whatever reason. Um,
But that's
right?
the thing. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want it to be whatever reason. Like, I think if you initiate consciously, then it makes then you're being authentic to that current person you're at or that current person you are. Right? Like for me, like it always upset me when it's just like, why did that happen? Oh, I don't know. Just we just drifted apart. Like that's not good enough. It's just like maybe the person you were becoming was the person I wanted to be as well, and you just never brought me along with you. And then it's just like, had you shown me who you were becoming, I would have been able to decide. But you just never gave me that shot, and so I feel left out. And like I think that's more relatable if you're in a relationship with somebody, right? Like if I'm going to become this new person, I want to change careers, find a new hobby, go in a different interest, and I start becoming a different person, and I don't bring you along. That's when you feel left out, and that's what, like I said, you have these issues of like we just drifted apart. It was whatever. It's like I don't know if it's whatever. Like some of these best friends just leave your life like that.
Yes, if you were close with someone, yes. I can see that happening, but I guess I'm thinking about people who you know casually, acquaintances, people come and go. You know,
Yeah, but do you really know them?
I mean, it's a matter of degree, right? I mean, you know people. I mean, you, you know degrees of people depending on how deep the relationship is. I mean, the connection is, right? You know, I mean, like my coworkers. I mean, some coworkers like became friends, and we hang out after work, outside of work, and talk outside of work, and and have continued to, uh, and kept in touch. But then there are plenty of people who I saw every day, and talked every day because they're in your surroundings, and I know them to some extent, but we don't really have a relationship outside of the office. So therefore, when I leave a job, right, I
Well, yeah, I would just contest that you never had a relationship with those people to begin with. It was all circumstantial, right? You were circumstantially by proximity, just in the
okay.
same space. But like, I don't know if there was a relationship, like
Yeah, okay. Again, I think this is a matter of
semantics. Yeah.
or difference in definition. Yeah. Whereas I, you know, would define relationship, there are different types of relationships. There are surface relationships, there's sort of
Mhm.
work relationships, there are different types of relationships, right? But I count all of them as relationship, to some degree, because it does, however little or superficial, it does impact your life to some degree.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree, and I'm trying to think like our relationship was probably closest that summer, and then maybe at different points over the years, right? Like, but it
Yeah.
always ebbed and flowed depending on where I was in my development or my life, and where you were in your life, and
Yeah.
what interest you were in, right? And so, and if that's the case, then like that for me is always saving hope for any relationship. There could be a stranger on the street that we share a coffee with, and like who knows if that stranger develops into something else in my life, 5 years from here that I would have never known. Just, I can't connect the dots looking forward. I can only connect them looking back. So who's to say?
Yeah, that's interesting. A recent podcast episode, well, only you're only my fifth, so everything's recent. Actually, brought up something similar. And he said that at one point we were close. Here's what's interesting. I kind of uh I think my recollection, my reflection on those, in this particular, in this instance, on those prior years, differently, with sort of a different sentiment and different nostalgia, than he did.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and I think I kind of emotionally moved on, um in a way that I had fondness for that, or I sort of like, I look back and I kind of like saw it for what it was, and that's it. It was what it was, right? I
Mm-hmm.
am no longer that person,
Mm-hmm.
and we are no longer that people. We're
Mm-hmm.
different. Our
Mm-hmm.
relationship now is different. That's kind of like how I see it. Um, but I don't think, here's the thing, I don't think we always see eye to eye on yeah, I don't know. I mean, are you wondering like why? I mean, I don't know, you and I, we haven't really drifted apart, did we? Yeah.
No, but again, we were like, we were friends, we were friendly, we were colleagues, right? So like we had multiple touch points
Yeah.
where we connected over the years. And like, I think the intensity of our relationship obviously like fluctuated based on how much we were either working together or like interested in the same things or going to the same events, right? Like that, I think that's a function of that. But
I think to your point that you're eloquently making, like we're different people, right? And so like I appreciate this moment for who you are now. I don't discount like all the 11 years that I've known you, but I do like look at that with fondness. But I'm more excited to sort of hear and experience who you are now in this moment because I know that it's a very different person than who I remember, who I had, or who
Yeah.
I had a relationships with.
I'm gonna hang on a second. Okay. I might edit that out. I don't
No
know.
worries.
No, I have this thing like I don't want to edit anything out because like I want to show the entire, the whole context. Like, so this is sort of to convey, to use your vernacular to convey authenticity.
Yeah, and listen,
All right.
I'm like moved that you're moved by the conversation and by reminiscing and like by being open. But like the man you're seeing in front of you today is qualitatively and a different person than who you knew, right?
I would definitely agree. You definitely grew up.
Right, and so like if that's the case, then like maybe
Sorry.
you, yeah, you only experienced like a piece of me, right? Maybe this is who I always was. I don't know, but like I think it's suffice to say that like we are always changing. So this idea that we're gonna be with the same person for the rest of our lives or like have the same relationships for the rest of our lives, it's just it's so like it just it just mitigates the possibility of where people can go. And so like if you became an overnight podcast Joe Rogan or something, right? And like you become like this person that I'll never see again, but I'll see from a distance. Like I will appreciate that person that you're becoming because like what else can I do, right? Like I'm not gonna like try to hold on to you and bring you back to this idea of who you were when I was 22, right? I'm not gonna do that. That doesn't make any sense. I'm gonna like, and I think that's where the healthy relationship is. And so like we've had this conversation with my wife where it's like if she wants to do something else, like she's my best friend, and as my best friend, like I would do whatever she wanted or whatever she needed, even if it was in spite of me, right? Because like I would want what's best for her, and I can control that. I want to be able to make the decision that I want to give her something that either I can't provide or that she needs, because like that's what you do for people. Like it's incredibly selfish to sort of say like I want to hold you to the idea of who I held you as, all these years, because like we're not that, we're never that.
You say all that and you say you have no authentic self. It seems like a complete contradiction.
Maybe this is the maybe this is always we've always been this way, just finding the words to communicate them, right? Maybe I now have the vocabulary to speak about something that I was touching these ideas, like as a 22-year-old. And maybe we all are this way. Maybe the men who can open up about their feelings just don't have the tool set or the skill set to sort of speak about it. And so once they do, like people resonate with that, and it gives somebody like a way of thinking and a way of communicating these ideas that they didn't have before. And so like that's what I think that's what people can offer by being authentically yourself, is like this, what you have right now you probably will never get again, so like let's just enjoy it and like let's just live it.
Okay. Oh my gosh. I don't know why I'm getting so emotional. Um, okay, I think maybe that's a good place to end.
Totally.
Okay. So, I realized that I just noticed that I kept turning the camera off, but I didn't turn off the mic. So funny. And none of this is gonna be edited, so whatever. What it is, what it is, and that's what you get. So,
You get what you get and you don't get upset, right?
right, exactly. Yeah, but I'm afraid that this is gonna sort of brand me.
Listen, if you're the Brene Brown of podcasts, that's not a bad thing.
Who?
The Brene Brown.
Who's that?
Oh, she's like she's like the self-help like psychologist who like has all these ideas on like emotional self-talk and like being empowering of emotions. Like she has some really interesting stuff. I totally encourage you to check her out.
Renee Brown.
Brene with a
Oh,
B.
Brene.
Mm-hmm.
B-R...
ENEBROWN. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Renee Brown. Okay. I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks, so I'll look for her and see if she's on Audible. But anyway, yeah, this was great talking. I feel like we could just keep going, but yeah, I think that was a really nice note to end. So let's do that. Yeah. So thanks for listening, everyone. And special thanks to my guest, Jonathan Vazcones. And you can find Beer Cake with JJ Co. on Anchor.fm and Spotify and YouTube, where you could listen to or watch the entire thing. And you could also follow this podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And you could also support it if you'd like. And there are multiple sites where you could make a donation. I think I need to narrow it down to one. I have this for some reason I am being very indecisive in terms of like the donation platform. So right now I'm on Anchor. Maybe you could help me with this decision. So I'm on Anchor.fm. So Anchor.fm, that's also the distribution platform, but it also has a built-in support thing. So, all you have to do is turn it on, and so it just comes with it. So I have that. And then I have also a Patreon account. And I have a Buy Me a Coffee account. And I'm waffling back and forth as to which one to go with. And I think I need to choose one because I'm giving people way too many choices. And, yeah. What do you think?
I go with Anchor FM since it would bring more listeners into your podcast. And then I would do the Patreon if you're going to do something outside of just like radio media or like talk media.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I was sort of leaning in that direction too. So that's awesome that you confirmed that I was, going in the right direction to put a value judgment on it.
It's just groupthink. You found somebody who's going to think like you. That's what's up.
Oh no, I need to break out of this tribe of two. All right. So thanks everyone. Thank you, John, for this. And tune in next time where I will have, I think my next guest is a musical guest. And we'll be talking music. No, it's not actually. No, that's next month. Okay, sorry. I'm getting my schedule confused. But anyway, well, thank you, everyone. Thank you. And tune in next time.